As Ohio goes, so too could Congress. All eyes will be on the state as it once again tries to draw fair congressional district maps. By fair, I mean maps that do not favor one party or class over another, a political tactic called gerrymandering. It's been 7 years since voters here approved a change to the state's constitution that bans gerrymandering, and yet it continues. The maps in place now have, in fact, been ruled unconstitutional by the state Supreme Court because they violate that ban against gerrymandering. Hence why lawmakers must now try again. This time, though, the White House is watching. With midterms around the corner, President Trump is calling on state lawmakers here and in Texas to draw maps that will not only protect the slim Republican majority in Congress, but expand it. One person very familiar with how Ohio grapples with this issue is Professor Michael Latner. He is a political scientist that the state called in to help draw politically balanced maps for the General Assembly. Maps that, by the way, were ignored. Professor, welcome to CTW.
Thanks for having me.
You also testified in federal court about the process here in Ohio. I wonder if you can go back and sort of encapsulate what your testimony was about.
Sure. Looking at the congressional and the state legislative maps, the research team I was working with assessed the bias in those maps in terms of whether or not voters of either party were disadvantaged by the drawing of the district boundaries. And what we found was that contrary to the requirements of the Redistricting Commission, all three maps were heavily biased in favor of Republican voters and yielded a large seat advantage in all three of those, the state Senate, the state Assembly, and the congressional map. Moreover, the process of trying to get a set of fair maps continued on, and there were several steps where both the commission and experts involved in the process and the Supreme Court came back to look at revised maps. And in each of those maps, there were, I would say, more and more clever ways to try to disguise the bias. But in every round, we found, and the Supreme Court agreed, that those maps were biased and unconstitutional in violation of the state constitution and the Redistricting Commission.
A lot of things have changed this time around, as you know. The state Supreme Court now has a 6-1 conservative majority. That appears to be something that could favor those who are trying to pass those more biased maps that you mentioned. And this process is now going to be through the state General Assembly, which means it could come to a party line vote. With so little in place to fight against this, what do you think people need to know?
Well, I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would bet very strongly on it being exactly a party line vote, because that's how the state legislature is divided. They are a product of these gerrymandered districts. And even though Ohio, as you mentioned, set up a redistricting commission in anticipation of the 2020 redistricting cycle, the main problem with that commission is that it was led by the political leadership, the partisan leadership of the state. That is the governor and the partisan majority leaders and partisan minority leaders. And predictably, when the maps that were offered, there was very little Democratic consultation because the Democratic Party's in the minority. And the commission basically kicked the can down the road. That's why they were, not so concerned about these Supreme Court losses, because their intention was likely just to wait out the clock until eventually the court said, well, now we have to hold an election, so we're going to use the older maps, or we'll use one version of the maps that the courts put in place. And that process is not likely to change. The biggest change, as you mentioned, is that the people of Ohio are less likely to get a favorable opinion from the new Supreme Court.
And that deadline, fast approaching November. Lawmakers have until November 30th to come up with those new maps. We'll have to see what they come up with. Professor, at that point, I want to come back and circle back to this conversation and talk to you again.
You bet.
Professor Michael Latner, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
That will wrap things up for Capitol this week. Remember, you can catch in-depth political coverage every day right here on Spectrum News 1.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.